Today I'm looking at a 1984 track by Meat Puppets. Perhaps this is something of an obscure one, and I realise when I do videos like this they're never going to get loads and loads of views, but that's not really what I'm about. I mean, if I want to get loads of views I would just be doing blues licks every week, or 5 terrible guitar mistakes you didn't even realise you were making, but that's not really me. So we're going to be looking at an obscure 1984 Meat Puppets track today. I'm going to play it through for you and then I'm going to show you how it's played. So Meat Puppets were, and still are I think, a band from Arizona, been around since the early 80s, and they did have a brief moment of superstardom in the 90s when they appeared on the Nirvana MTV Unplugged, and Kurt Cobain was a big fan, invited them on to play a couple of songs with him. And originally they were a hardcore punk band on the SST Records label, alongside people like Minutemen, Husker Du, loads of other great bands, but quite quickly they moved on from that straight up kind of punk sound, and you start hearing elements of what could be described as kind of psychedelic country in their sound. And they've put out loads of great records. The ones that I keep coming back to are Meat Puppets 2 and the record that came after that, Up on the Sun, and they're fantastic records, and they would be a really good place to start if you're not familiar with Meat Puppets. And this track is taken from Meat Puppets 2, and I was just trying to put my finger on why exactly it is that I like this track so much, and there's just something about the atmosphere of it. It's really hypnotic, these quite unusual cycling chords, the slightly unusual timing, and of course that great psychedelic echoey guitar sound. So let me break down what's going on. I'll show you how to play it. I'm playing this one in the key of E minor, no capo, though if you listen to the original recording it's slightly sharp. It actually sounds closer to F minor. So Whether they used a capo or whether the tape was sped up, I'm not exactly sure. There are some live recordings floating around, and there's a demo version. They're all played in the key of E minor, no capo. So I'm assuming probably the tape was sped up, but I don't know that for sure. If you did want to play along with the original recording, you can just put a capo on at the first fret, or you can tune your guitar up. It's no big deal, but I'm playing in E minor today. And I say the key of E minor, though it's a slightly slippery one. The chord progression is quite unusual. It doesn't exactly fit the key of E minor. There are some unusual chords, but it does keep returning to that E minor chord. That seems like the kind of home chord to my ears. And it's all based on this cyclical chord progression, the one that goes like this. And it's just that chord progression that is repeated. The opening chord is this one, which is a beautiful sounding chord. At first I thought it was just a D major bar chord, but it's actually this kind of a sound. So what I'm doing, I've got a bar at the 5th fret, just barring across all of the strings except the low E string, and then I'm fretting 7th fret on the G, 7th fret on the B as well, and it gives you this kind of beautiful sound. And I suppose it's a variation on a D major chord, but we've got this G note in there as well, which is the 4th or the 11th. There's also the F sharp in there, so I suppose technically you would describe that as a D add 11. I suppose that's the correct name for that chord, but whatever you want to call it, it's a beautiful sounding chord. And we're just strumming that once. Then we've got these really beautiful single note parts played on the top 3 strings, so actually moving up 3 frets here. I'm choosing just to keep that bar in place. That just helps with the flow of the progression, but on this part really just hearing the top 3 strings, and it's fret 10 on the G, 8 on the B and 10 on the top string, and the basic little melody that you're hearing is just this. But those notes are kind of blending together. Sometimes you're catching double stops, sometimes you're playing 3 notes at a time, so it makes sense just to hold down this 3-note shape as your starting point, I think, and then strumming that. I'm pulling off with my pinky from the 10th fret to the 8th fret on the top string, hitting the 3rd string, and then moving my pinky over to the B string. It's another pull off, and then striking the 3rd string. So if you want a fixed part, that's the way I would play it. So strum, pull off, 3rd string, another pull off, and 3rd string. But it's not always played as precisely as that. I don't think you need to be super precise with that. Sometimes it's single notes, sometimes it's more of a strummed thing. So that's really the kind of essence of what's going on there. And I'll talk about the delay in a moment, but the delay is doing a lot of work here, and it creates those kind of extra notes that you can hear in the part. So far we've got this, and then we're just coming down to an open E minor chord and just playing the lower notes in that chord and then the higher notes. And then we got some simple bar chords, a C and a D, hitting both of those chords twice. And then we've got, it's our same little riff, but this time we're playing it up in the 11th position, but it's exactly the same. So those kind of pull-offs with the little finger or with the pinky. And if you found that a little bit awkward with the bar across there, and you don't need to have the bar there necessarily, I think maybe sometimes you can hear some bass notes in there, but mostly it's just the top 3 strings, so it might become more comfortable just to play those 3 notes on top and not to worry about the bar at this point. So that's our main chord progression, and if you count that out, you'll find that it's 3.5 bars long if you're counting it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 2 bars on that bit, and then the whole thing cycles round again. And that little bar of 2 beats I think is really important to the whole vibe of this riff. It just creates a slightly unusual flavour. So if I put all of that together slowly, we've got this. That's our basic riff. There are some variations on that you can hear as it goes round. It's not played exactly the same way every time. Sometimes on that opening chord it's more of a strum there. As I said, with these high parts, sometimes you're playing individual notes one at a time. Sometimes you've got more of a chord thing going on with some double or triple stops. And there are only 2 parts in this song. You've got that main riff which I just spoke about. The song opens with that. I think it's played 5 times. Then we've got a bridge section which is really just 2 chords. It's E minor and C, and we're just embellishing those 2 chords slightly. So starting with an E minor chord, and just letting that hang, and then you can just add in some little embellishments. So that the main ones that I'm hearing are the 3rd fret on the B and the 3rd fret on the top string. Just use your little finger to get those. And then we're heading to C major chord. And just arpeggiating that in quite a loose way, again with some embellishments. So you can hammer on with the 2nd finger. And you can again play the 3rd fret on the B or the 3rd fret on the top string. We're just going between those 2 chords, so it's 2 bars on E minor, 2 bars on C. And then we go round again, E minor. Back to C. When you hit the C the 2nd time round, we've got 4 bars on C, and it's just building up. And then we're back round for the main riff once again. And that's about it for this one. Nothing drastically difficult here. I mean, those little high riffs might take a little bit of practice just to get those coming through cleanly, but it doesn't need to be flawlessly played. You just need to keep the feel going. And as far as the feel goes, I'd say the main thing is just to have some dynamics in there. You can dig in quite hard with some of those chords, and then some of these parts you can play quite delicately. So you've got big chords and then delicate single note stuff, so you can really exaggerate the contrast between those 2 things. Let's talk about gear, and let's talk about getting the right sound for this one. It's really important to dial in the right kind of a sound for this one. That's what creates this amazing atmosphere. So the Meat Puppets guitar player Kurt with a C, and he gets an amazing sound on this one. I'm not sure exactly what it is he's using. He did seem to use he still does use a Les Paul quite a lot, so I'm guessing he probably used a Les Paul on this recording. I'm not absolutely sure about that, but that's what I'm using today. This is it's a 59 reissue Les Paul. Going into my Fender Princeton, I've got a little bit of overdrive from the J Rocket Archer, but the really important thing here is the delay. And for the delay today, I'm using my vintage Roland Space Echo. Just wanted some real tape echo sound. It is an amazing sounding thing. It's a little bit temperamental, but when it's working nicely as it is today, fortunately, it does sound really, really good. What you want is a delay that's roughly in time with the tune. It's an 8-note delay that I'm going for here. So you've got, so it's 1 and 2, and you want those repeats to be in an 8-note rhythm. And I'm just dialing that in by ear. You can just change the delay time, just experiment with that till it's roughly in time with the track. I don't think it needs to be exactly in time, just get that by feel. If you're not lucky enough to have a real tape delay, doesn't matter. You can do this with any kind of delay pedal. You might have one with a tap tempo feature, in which case it's very easy just to get those delays sounding in time. And as far as the repeats on the delay go, I've got, what is that, 4 or 5 repeats. You don't just want the feedback turned right down, you want a few repeats in there, so you've got that kind of psychedelic sound. And the delay is reasonably loud as well, so and it depends on your delay pedal as well, so use your ears with that. If you've got a kind of old tape echo or something, a pedal that gives you that style of echo, then those echoes are going to be a little bit darker, so you can probably turn them up a little bit louder than perhaps you would with a kind of bright sounding digital delay. And I'm using the middle pickup position here, so bridge and neck on at the same time. That sort of sounds closest to the original recording to me. As I said, overdrive is coming from the J Rocket Archer. Really important with this one to dial in the gain exactly right. It's not a high gain kind of a sound, and I mean, the point you want to get it to, I think, is when you play those big chords and dig in, you want to be able to hear some overdrive, but on those more delicate bits it actually sounds more like a clean tone. So that's when you want a kind of touch sensitive overdrive that's going to give you both of those things, and just play around with that gain control until you get that kind of response. So let me just kind of demo this sound for you. So there we are, one more week of content has been delivered, and I'm fully expecting this to be trending on the YouTube front page anytime now. And if you would like tab, if you would like a backing track, you can get those by signing up to my Patreon page. Pay what you like, get access to the backing track, the tab, and all of my other tabs and backing tracks. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time.